My brother said I was too embarrassing for the main table, so I arrived with the one person they never wanted to face. I walked into the wedding reception, and the loud sound of hundreds of people hit me at once. The huge ballroom was absolutely stunning, smelling of expensive lilies and old, secure money. I tried to look calm, but my hands were shaking slightly. I searched for an empty seat, but before I could find one, a server wearing white gloves stopped me. He checked my name off his list and then, with a polite but firm smile, pointed me toward the back of the room. I felt that cold, familiar knot tighten in my stomach. The kids' table. Just then, I saw my older brother, Aaron, at the main table. He was surrounded by important-looking guests, all laughing loudly. He spotted me and waved his hand dismissively. "Sorry, sis," he called out, making sure his voice carried over the music. "We need room for the real VIPs up here. People with actual status." His new wife, Claudia, leaned over and added her cruel joke with a cold, clear voice. "You understand, right, Lena? You're not exactly polished enough for the front row." The humiliation was instant. A terrible, public announcement that I was their failure, their dirty little secret, unfit for their beautiful new life. My heart pounding with a mixture of shame and a slow-burning rage, I began the long, agonizing walk past the lavishly decorated tables. It felt like every single relative had stopped talking just to watch my slow progress. I could hear the whispers following me like little, poisonous arrows. "Is that Lena? I heard she still works retail, right?" I heard one cousin hiss to her date. "Look at that dress. Doesn't she know you're supposed to dress the part here?" I forced my chin up, but my smile was frozen and completely fake. I finally reached the very last corner, next to the kitchen entrance, and quickly slid onto a small, uncomfortable folding chair. The table was full of bored teenagers who barely looked up from their phones, which was a relief but also another quiet insult. My cheap, simple dress felt wrong. My wine glass was shaking so much that I had to set it down quickly, gripping my hands tightly under the table. This moment was more than a joke about seating. It was them publicly affirming the painful truth they had created years ago, that I was small, that my life was a failure, and that I was utterly disposable to them. As the formal dinner was ending, Aaron stood up again to give a second, crucial toast. He looked completely comfortable in the bright spotlight, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that fit him perfectly. He lifted his glass, and the huge ballroom went silent again. "To family," he began, his voice loud and ringing with false sincerity, "and to everyone who made this classy night possible, representing the true legacy of our name." He made a huge show of scanning the entire room, making sure every person felt acknowledged, even though we all knew he only cared about the front row. Then, his eyes found mine, all the way in the back, and he paused, holding the moment for his cruel punchline. He dropped his voice slightly, making his final words sound like a casual, crushing afterthought. "Even the ones who try their best." The main table erupted in loud, fake laughter. My father joined in, chuckling behind his hand. I lowered my gaze, staring at the cloth on the table, but the intense, burning pain was quickly replaced by something colder and much sharper. I made a silent, firm vow. I would not let them wipe away my dignity. The party was almost over, and I was waiting outside the main hall for my taxi, feeling tired and defeated. That's when I heard Aaron and Claudia talking near a huge floral display. They thought they were alone, and their voices were low, quick, and full of smug satisfaction. "She should have just kept her mouth shut about Dad's affair all those years ago," Aaron hissed, sounding annoyed that I still existed. "Now she's just bitter and annoying. She deserves the back table." Claudia let out a short, cold laugh. "Well, it worked out for us, didn't it? She took all the drama with her when she left. Now we have the company, the money, and the good name." My jaw tightened, so hard I felt my teeth ache. The affair was just the simple lie they told. What they were really talking about was the much larger financial crime they had covered up. I was the one who had tried to speak the truth, and they had punished me for my honesty, making me the permanent outsider. Hearing them discuss my banishment so casually, as if it were a piece of smart strategy, solidified my decision. I knew I couldn't just leave, I had to fight back, and I had to destroy their perfect lie. I rushed into the quiet, marble restroom, my hands clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. I splashed cold water on my burning face and stared into the mirror. Embarrassing, huh? The family fool, I whispered to my tired reflection. As I was trying to calm myself, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen showed an incoming text message from a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up, ready to ignore it, but the name on the contact line made my heart stop. Evelyn. It was my estranged mother. I hadn't seen or spoken to her since the huge scandal broke over a decade ago, the event that had sent her away in shame. The message was short, direct, and completely shocking. I know what Aaron did. He lied about everything. We need to talk, Lena. My whole body went cold, then hot with a sudden, powerful realization. What if everything Aaron and my father had told me was a massive, carefully planned lie? The shame in my face slowly changed to a look of fierce, cold purpose. I knew I had to answer her. My mind raced backward, going over the painful, missing years. After the scandal, when my mother left, the family story was simple and cruel. Evelyn had an affair and, in a fit of greed, tried to steal money from my father's business accounts before running away. I was young and confused, but I felt strongly that it wasn't true. I tried to defend her, sensing the massive lie. But Aaron and my father quickly shut me down, telling me I was slanderous and disloyal for suggesting they were criminals. They cut me off from the family wealth and business, saying I wasn't reliable because I questioned their authority. I lost my scholarships, my relationships crumbled, and I ended up working in retail, living exactly the small, cheap life they wanted me to have. All because I dared to question their lie. The loneliness of those years, the crushing weight of being publicly judged and excluded, was the invisible scar they had left on me. Now, hearing from Evelyn, I felt a powerful, undeniable conviction. It was time to turn that scar into a weapon against them. I took a deep breath, pushing down 10 years of doubt and deep hurt, and finally called my mother back. She answered on the first ring, and her voice was steady, the sound of a woman who had been waiting for this moment. I saw the wedding pictures online, she said softly, and I know what Aaron did to you that night. I'm so very sorry, Lena. They said you left for another man and that you stole from the company. I told her, the painful words leaving my mouth after a decade of silence. That is the family's official story still. Evelyn's voice hardened instantly, becoming firm and clear. That wasn't true. Not a single word of it. Your father was the one having the affair, and when I threatened to leave him and take the company half that was rightfully mine, he and Aaron fabricated the entire story. They made me look like the thief and the cheat to cover up their own huge embezzlement of funds. The truth hit me with a physical force, running a cold chill straight down my spine. The betrayal wasn't just Aaron humiliating me, it was him systematically destroying 2 lives to protect his greedy, criminal secret. I've been planning this return for years, Evelyn said, her voice now filled with a quiet, powerful resolve. I couldn't come back until I had gathered every single piece of proof. Check your email right now, Lena. I quickly logged into my account, my fingers flying over the keys. There, sitting in my inbox, was a huge zip file labeled simply Proof. I opened the folder, and the contents flashed onto my screen. Clean bank statements, official-looking transfer receipts, old letters, and copies of legal documents. It was all there. Clear, undeniable evidence proving that Aaron and our father had moved millions of dollars out of Evelyn's company accounts right before they forced her out and accused her of theft. There were copies of checks with my father's genuine signature, signing away company funds to accounts Aaron controlled. The sight of the evidence confirmed every lonely, isolated moment I had suffered was based on their deliberate, monstrous deception to cover a crime. I've stayed silent all these years, hoping that justice would find them, but it hasn't, Evelyn confessed over the phone. But seeing what they did to you at that wedding, keeping you at the back table like that, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. They think I'm weak and gone forever, a defeated enemy. Her voice became stronger, bolder, like a battle call. I need someone strong enough to face them, Lena. Someone who has nothing left to lose. I need you to stand by me. You mean you want to come back with me for the next big event? I asked, a dangerous, thrilling excitement bubbling up inside me. The anniversary party next month? Exactly, Evelyn confirmed, her voice sounding like a general preparing for the final battle. It's their legacy night. We will show them the true legacy. I want you to walk in with me, your head held high. I looked at the undeniable evidence of their crimes on my screen. They said I was embarrassing. I repeated, a new smile forming on my lips, cold and brilliant. Let's give them something they will truly never forget, Mom. Let's bring the truth straight to the main table. A few days later, the formal invitation arrived in the mail. It was a thick, glossy card for Aaron and Claudia's annual company anniversary party. The elegant card announced the theme, Elegant Legacy Night. I held the card, turning it over and over in my hands. Legacy. They honestly believed they had earned the right to celebrate their lie with such pomp. I carefully circled the date on my calendar, feeling a calm, focused certainty completely replaced my earlier shame. My life in retail was about to end, and my real mission was about to begin. I called Evelyn, and we confirmed the final details. I was going to use this event, this stage they had created for their own self-glorification, to expose the truth and reclaim my dignity. I was no longer the quiet girl they could send to the back corner. I was the silent, determined partner in a strategic revenge plot, and I was going to make sure the only people feeling embarrassment in the room were them. My first important step was to stop dressing like the person they wanted me to be. I knew I couldn't walk in looking needy or desperate. I had to look like I belonged there more than they did. I called Sarah, an old college friend who had become a very successful stylist for powerful clients. She agreed to help me get ready. This isn't about looking rich, Sarah, I explained as we went through racks of beautiful clothing. It's about looking undeniable. I need to look like I've been waiting for this exact moment for 10 years. We finally chose a stunning, deep sapphire dress that was perfectly tailored and simple. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it fit like armor and instantly made me feel stronger and much taller. Sarah chose minimal, high-quality jewelry that didn't scream wealth but whispered confidence and power. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the calm, poised woman staring back. The clothes were my armor, giving me the mental strength I needed. I realized that for years, I had unconsciously dressed the part of the family failure. Now, I was finally dressing the part of the truth teller and the avenger. Evelyn arrived 2 days before the massive party. She flew in from Switzerland, where she had been living quietly, preparing and waiting for this exact moment. She looked poised, incredibly graceful, and composed, her years of absence giving her an air of mystery and quiet authority. She was no longer the broken woman I remembered. She was beautiful, strong, and completely ready for the fight. "Ready, Lena?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine. I had spent the last few weeks studying the documents, moving past my shock and into a cold, hard strategy. "I'm ready," I nodded. They thought they could steal everything from us and then treat me like a cheap joke. Now, they'll see how terribly wrong they were. We went over the plan one last time. Attend, act gracious, and wait for the perfect, most public moment, the moment of Aaron's planned toast to his legacy. "Revenge," Evelyn said, a dark, satisfying smirk touching her lips, "is a dish best served at the main table." The next day, my cousin Jenna, who always got stuck doing Aaron's dirty work, called me, pretending to be concerned. "Aaron asked me to call you to check in," she said, her voice shaky and nervous. "He says he hopes you don't wear your discount heels again and embarrass him in front of his important clients." She was clearly terrified of upsetting Aaron, but also scared of the new me. I laughed, a clear, confident sound that Jenna had absolutely never heard from me before. "You can tell Aaron not to worry about my shoes, Jenna," I said smoothly, my voice calm and controlled. "My choice of escort will be unforgettable enough. She has impeccable taste, and she'll make sure I look perfectly appropriate for the entire evening." I hung up the phone and knew my message would cause total panic and chaos. Aaron hated not being in control of every single detail. He would spend the rest of the day worrying about which celebrity or famous friend I might bring, never guessing I was bringing the one person he spent a decade making everyone forget. The suspense I created was my first powerful victory. I spent the final week meeting with Mr. Hayes, the corporate attorney. He quickly confirmed the terrible financial status of my mother's former company, which Aaron now controlled completely. "He became sloppy and greedy, Lena," Mr. Hayes explained, showing me a complex chart of offshore accounts and illegal money transfers. "He thought he was invincible because of his father's connections. So he signed everything himself and didn't bother to fix the massive tax problems your father left behind. It turned out that the company was already under a quiet but extremely deep investigation by federal tax authorities for massive tax fraud. Evelyn's original, clean documents, which I now had safe on a small flash drive, were the final key to unlocking the entire criminal case. I realized that my revenge didn't require any physical action. All I had to do was show the right people the truth at the exact right moment. Aaron was already destroying himself with his greed. I was simply going to publicly expose his complete downfall. Evelyn and I went over the plan until it felt less like a dangerous mission and more like a carefully choreographed dance routine. We practiced our entrance, our smiles, our polite handshakes, and most importantly, the exact words we would use when we addressed Aaron. "We must not show any anger or fear," Evelyn reminded me, fixing the lapel of my dress. "Anger makes us look hysterical and unstable, just like the family expected. We must show controlled regret and deep disappointment in his behavior. That is what truly hurts people like Aaron the most." We agreed the moment of the grand reveal would be during his planned toast to the future. It was the moment he would be most proud, most exposed to public scrutiny. We rehearsed the walk across the ballroom, the transfer of the flash drive to the media center, and our graceful, silent walkout. Every tiny detail had to be perfect. The night before the party, the text messages from my anxious relatives were flying fast and furious in the family group chat. Claudia, trying to assert her dominance one last time, posted a message for all to see. "Hope Lena wears something appropriate this time, not whatever she pulled out of a bargain bin. It's a formal event." I waited patiently for a few minutes, letting her feeling of superiority and confidence settle in. Then I typed my reply. I used simple, elegant language, avoiding any direct insult. "Don't worry, Claudia," I wrote. "I'm bringing someone with impeccable taste. She always ensures my ensemble is perfectly suitable for a party celebrating legacy." I turned off my phone right after sending it. I knew my simple, clear reply would cause total distress and destroy their sleep. They wanted to control my presence. I was controlling their anxiety. The game was mine to play now. The anniversary party was blindingly opulent, even more grand than the wedding. The venue was a huge museum hall, with massive columns and a stunning chandelier that looked like 1,000 diamonds. The air was thick with the powerful scent of money and expensive perfume. Evelyn and I paused at the huge, arched entrance. She looked like a powerful queen who had finally returned from a long exile. I took her arm firmly. Then we walked in side by side. The noise didn't stop all at once, but rather it dissolved into a sudden, stunned silence. Conversations died one by one, had snapped around, and a wave of silent, total shock washed over the entire room. Everyone knew Evelyn. She was the woman they had spent a decade erasing and lying about. Seeing us together, arm in arm, was the ultimate contradiction to their false family story. We walked slowly toward the main table, savoring the sound of the silence we had created. Aaron was deep in conversation with a prominent local politician, but his jaw literally dropped when he saw us. He tried to quickly recover, forcing a huge, fake smile onto his face. Claudia, who was sipping champagne, actually choked on her drink, and her glass slipped from her hand, shattering loudly on the marble floor. I looked directly at Aaron, my eyes clear and cold. We stopped just a few feet from their table. I spoke loud enough for only Aaron to hear, my voice low and steady, laced with quiet satisfaction. "You said I was too embarrassing for the main table, Aaron," I gently reminded him, nodding toward my mother. "But she is the reason you have won in the first place." The tables around us, filled with important clients and business rivals, looked on, their faces completely frozen in a state of absolute, intense curiosity. The room quickly filled with a frantic, buzzing sound of whispers and nervous chatter, but Evelyn handled the crisis with perfect grace. She moved through the paralyzed crowd, greeting each guest one by one. She didn't argue or shout. She simply greeted people with calm, cutting politeness. "Hello, James," she said to an old friend of my father's. "It's been so long. I do hope you finally apologized to your wife for telling her I was a thief. I wouldn't want her to think ill of you." She moved on quickly, leaving him paralyzed and sweating profusely. Aaron stood pale and motionless, realizing the massive scale of his public mistake. He had gathered his most important clients and rivals together to celebrate his success, and I had delivered the ultimate, perfect sabotage. Every eye was on Evelyn, the powerful woman they had slandered, and on me, the quiet daughter who had delivered the ghost of the past. Aaron finally managed to break out of his frozen state. He lunged and grabbed my wrist, pulling me roughly into a small, dark service corridor near the back of the hall. His expensive suit was already looking rumpled and cheap from his panic. "What are you doing here, Lena?" he hissed, his voice trembling violently with panic and fear. "Get her out of here now. You're ruining everything." I looked at his desperate, defeated face, feeling nothing but cold, clinical distance. I pulled back my wrist and smiled, a calm, hard smile that held no warmth. "I'm making sure the real embarrassment gets seated exactly where he belongs, Aaron," I replied, my voice a quiet, dangerous promise of pain. "In the spotlight." I then showed him the small, silver flash drive, letting the light catch its surface. "I think it's time everyone saw the true documents of your legacy night." I knew the game was almost finished. The humiliation he had planned for me was now focused entirely on him and his criminal lies. I returned to the ballroom just as Aaron was making a frantic attempt to compose himself at the main table. He desperately clinked his champagne glass one last time, forcing a smile that was clearly painted on his face. "Let us toast, everyone," he tried to boom, his voice shaking, "to legacy, to success, and to forgiveness." But before the guests could raise their glasses, I calmly walked up to the microphone stand near the stage. My voice was completely clear and steady, cutting through the heavy, nervous air. "Actually, Aaron," I announced, my smile genuine and cold, "I think I have a more appropriate toast to offer to the guests. A toast to honesty." Every single eye in the room snapped toward me, the girl who had been exiled. It was the perfect moment to strike. I caught the eye of the technician in the booth, who was still trying to look busy, and gave him a deliberate, firm nod. I walked over to the AV stand and handed the technician the small, silver USB stick. "Please project this," I requested, keeping my voice polite but absolutely firm. "It's just a small slideshow I put together. Just a few final, important details for the Legacy Night celebration." Aaron saw the drive being inserted into the system, and his face instantly turned a terrible, shocking ash-white color. He screamed, "Stop! Don't do it! That is confidential data. It's a setup!" He lunged toward the technician, but it was already too late. The first slide popped up on the huge screen behind the stage, the same screen he had intended to use for his corporate propaganda videos. The images that appeared were clean, cold, and entirely professional. They were not blurry photos. They were high-resolution, dated copies of bank transfers, legal contracts, and official documents. The screen showed undeniable proof of embezzlement, detailing exactly how millions of dollars were moved into offshore shell accounts controlled by Aaron and my father. There were clear breakdowns of the massive tax fraud scheme and photos of my father's actual signature used to pin the entire theft on Evelyn. Gasps and shocked murmurs echoed loudly throughout the room. People were whispering, pointing at Aaron, and then turning to look at Evelyn, who stood tall and silent beside me. The truth, finally exposed in such a public way, was a powerful, beautiful thing to witness. "This is completely fake!" Aaron roared desperately, his composure completely gone. He was shouting now, pointing a shaking, wild finger at the screen. "She is lying! My sister is trying to ruin me and this firm." Evelyn calmly stepped forward, holding up a physical, undeniable copy of a signed transfer receipt. She spoke softly into the microphone, her voice carrying deep, genuine disappointment. "No, dear," she said, shaking her head slowly. "This is your handwriting, Aaron. And these are the accounts you secretly set up with your father, using my good name and reputation to cover up your terrible theft." The entire room went into a state of stunned, deadly silence. Aaron stood there, trembling, his entire false life and legacy collapsing in one single, terrible moment. The scene instantly fell apart into pure, unadulterated chaos. It was worse than an argument. It was a total corporate dissolution. The clients who had millions invested with Aaron's firm immediately got up, their faces furious, pulling out their phones to call their personal lawyers. Claudia, hysterical and weeping, desperately tried to delete footage from other guests' phones, But people quickly started pushing past her to get out. Several guests had already filmed the entire projection and the emotional confrontation, and the footage was already online. Within minutes, the shocking scandal, complete with documentary evidence, hit social media. Aaron was left standing alone at the main table, staring at the evidence of his own crime. I didn't need to stay for the messy, terrible fallout. I took Evelyn's arm firmly, and we walked out slowly, with absolute dignity, leaving the terrified screams and frantic phone calls behind us. The night air felt fresh and clean compared to the stench of their lies inside. "Was that too much, Lena?" Evelyn asked me, her eyes wet with deep relief. I smiled, feeling a deep, quiet, intense sense of justice finally achieved. "They wanted embarrassment, Mom," I said. "I gave them the truth. The entire world is watching them now, and they can never hide again behind their fake legacy." We got into our waiting car and simply drove away from the complete wreckage of their false life. The truth is out, but the final, public revenge is still to come. If you believe the underestimated deserve the ultimate win and a lifetime of justice, please hit subscribe for more stories of justice delivered cold and complete. The news the next day was absolutely devastating for Aaron and Claudia. Every major national news outlet ran the story with brutal clarity. Corporate fraud exposed at prestigious family firm. Aaron resigned from the company in complete disgrace just 2 days later, issuing a weak, unbelievable statement that blamed his sudden departure on unexpected health concerns, which absolutely no one believed. Claudia's perfect, lavish social world crashed even harder. Her lucrative sponsorships with luxury brands, which were her main source of easy income and status, were all dropped overnight. She was instantly removed from all the important socialite committees she loved so much. Their life, which was built entirely on Aaron's fraudulent business and false reputation, was utterly shattered. The calls started coming in quickly from the extended family, the same aunts and cousins who had whispered and laughed about my cheap dress. They all tried to call me, claiming they always knew Aaron was reckless and had always secretly believed in me. I ignored every single one of their calls and texts. I didn't need their fake, sudden loyalty now. Their silence and their laughter at the wedding had already shown me exactly who they were when it truly mattered. I was completely done seeking their shallow approval and done playing their cruel social games. I knew the only people who mattered were those who valued truth and honesty, not those who were just desperately trying to save face. The official, serious investigations began immediately. Mr. Hayes, the corporate attorney, contacted me with huge news. He confirmed that the federal tax authorities were taking the case extremely seriously due to the clear evidence of large-scale tax evasion and corporate fraud I had provided. Aaron was immediately barred from holding any financial executive position in the future. The most important, satisfying result, however, was for Evelyn. The state formally and legally cleared her name of all theft and fraud allegations. Her reputation, which they had tried to bury under shame and lies for 15 long years, was finally and officially restored. A week later, Evelyn held a major press conference, using the exact same stage Aaron had used for his celebration. I stood beside her, silent but incredibly proud of her strength. She spoke clearly and passionately about the long fight for justice and the deep pain of being wrongly accused. "Truth delayed is still truth delivered," she stated simply, her voice resonating with years of patient suffering and final victory. I was her evidence, her anchor, the daughter she had protected, and the partner who had brought the full, terrible truth to light. With Evelyn's name completely cleared and her accounts legally unfrozen, we immediately began the work to rebuild her company. We named the new firm Phoenix & Company, a name deliberately chosen to symbolize our strength and rebirth from the ashes. I proudly became a full partner, finally leaving my thankless retail job behind forever. We worked side by side, building something honest and secure from the ground up. Our slogan, which I personally wrote, was a promise and a tribute to our hard-won journey: Rise beautifully. Rise again. I was finally working a job that truly challenged my mind and made me deeply proud, using my intelligence to build something real and lasting. Aaron and Claudia's fate continued its terrible downward spiral. They were quickly forced to sell their huge, expensive mansion to pay off their massive legal fees and attempt to settle their endless debts. I drove past the house as the movers were taking out the last sad boxes. It looked completely empty and hollow, a perfectly fitting monument to their greedy, false life. As I drove away, I noticed something that brought a smile to my face, a huge, brand new billboard being installed right across the street. It was a massive, elegant advertisement for Phoenix & Company featuring a beautiful picture of a smiling Evelyn and me. It was a permanent, daily reminder of the legacy they had thrown away. About a month later, Aaron showed up unannounced at the new Phoenix & Company office. He looked tired, defeated, and much older than his years. He sat across the desk from me, barely able to make any eye contact. "I was jealous of you, Lena," he finally admitted, his voice rough with shame. "I was jealous that you had the true courage to tell the truth when I couldn't. I was always a coward, afraid to lose the money." I looked at the man who had ruined my life and then blamed me for it. I felt no anger, only a cold, complete pity. "Truth doesn't need your permission, Aaron," I told him quietly and firmly. "It only needs someone willing to speak it, no matter the cost." I was cleaning out my closet one day when I found my old retail name tag. It read simply Lena Customer Service. I held the little piece of plastic, remembering the intense shame I felt at the wedding. I laughed, a short, final sound, and dropped the name tag into a donation box of old clothes. "Embarrassing, huh?" I said to myself, closing the lid with a snap. I was no longer defined by the small, cheap job they used to mock me for. I was now defined by the courage and strength I had found when I was at my absolute lowest point. Months later, Evelyn and I stood together at a massive, important corporate awards ceremony. We were not in the back corner, we were proudly on the stage, accepting a prestigious award for corporate transparency and ethical business practices. When the entire crowd stood and cheered loudly for us, I looked at Evelyn, and we shared a long, silent, knowing look. It was the complete, final reversal of the humiliation and judgment we had both suffered. I hosted a small, warm, honest dinner party at my new apartment for a few close friends and the few honest relatives. There was no main table, no hierarchy, and no assigned seats. Everyone was simply equal and welcome. I raised my glass of simple, good wine. "To the seat everyone deserves," I announced, my voice full of genuine gratitude and confidence. "A seat at a table that is always built only on truth and honesty." A prestigious national business magazine ran a huge, long article about our entire story. The headline was a perfect summary of our journey, the embarrassing daughter who rebuilt a family's reputation. The article praised my quiet resilience and Evelyn's remarkable bravery. The internet was calling our story the comeback of the decade, and I finally knew that the world saw me not as a failure, but as a hero who fought for her truth. Claudia, now divorced from Aaron and living a cheap, simple life in a small rental apartment, sent me one final piece of mail. It was a single, plain card. Inside she had written, "I finally learned who the real embarrassment was, Lena. I am truly sorry for everything I said." I read the note without any emotion and dropped it straight into the shredder. I didn't need her apology, and I had no space in my new life for her regret. Evelyn gave a powerful, passionate speech to a hall full of aspiring young businesswomen. "Humiliation ends when you decide it does," she told them, her voice strong and moving. "Never, ever let someone else's lie or opinion define your worth." I sat in the audience, watching her, deeply proud of the powerful woman she had become, and incredibly proud of the strength we had found together through our struggle. We stood together, Evelyn and I, walking out of the grand hall after her amazing speech. The camera panned over us, two powerful, victorious women. The final voiceover played, a quiet, strong promise of a life finally lived completely on my own terms. They said I was too embarrassing for their table, so I built one where truth had a seat and everyone else had a stand. Please like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks.